بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Okay, in the last few lessons that we had concerning this issue of cooperation with the various groups, and specifically this principle used by Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood, and their founder Hassan al-Banna, which is that we should cooperate with each other in those issues in which we agree, and we should overlook and pardon each other in those issues in which we disagree. And this principle that was invented by the founder of Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin has been used in the last century by many of the Muslim groups in order to justify turning a blind eye to the many serious deviations in belief and methodology that we find amongst the people, all under the name or under the banner of trying to unite the Muslims. And of course, from a practical point of view, we know that this is false, and it's a failure, and we don't see anything except more and more differing and more separating. So this book that we've been going through is concerned with looking at this principle in detail and showing its falsehood and showing how it opposes many of the foundations, the principles, the usul in the book and the sunnah, and which the salaf were upon. So in the last lesson, or the last lesson or two, the things we were discussing were related to the issue of the issue of differing, using differing itself as an evidence. Like, for example, just because two scholars might differ on an issue, then a person might say, well, because there's a difference of opinion, therefore, we can take any view that we want. Meaning, using the differing itself as a proof, right? Because there's differing, that in itself is a proof, therefore, that we can, that we choose a certain path. Instead of, what is the evidence from the book and the sunnah and from ijma', and instead of looking at it from that angle, just the mere presence of differing itself is being used as a hujjah or as a proof. So this was like the topic that was covered in some of the previous lessons. When a person makes a mistake, when is he pardoned, and when is he not pardoned? Right? When someone makes an error, when is he to be forgiven? So if he has knowledge, he has ilm, and he's seeking the truth, and he's qualified, and he makes ijtihad, and he makes an error, then he receives one reward, and he's forgiven for his mistake. But if it's a person who's ignorant, is not qualified, and he speaks without knowledge, and he falls into error, this person is blameworthy and sinful. And likewise, a person after the truth has been shown to him, he then persists upon the error and something which is incorrect, then likewise that person too is sinful. So it's not the case that everyone who falls into a mistake is actually pardoned and forgiven, right? Because this is something that is claimed by these same people who use the like of this false principle in order to push aside the differences and the errors, right? So not everybody is actually forgiven and overlooked for mistakes that they fall into. We also looked into the issue that clarifying the mistakes is obligatory. So whenever we see mistakes and errors that people fall into, or that the scholars fall into, then it's obligatory upon the other scholars to clarify them and to explain that they are in opposition to the book and the sunnah, and the fact that only the prophets are immune from persisting upon error. Right? They are immune from that. And as for those besides them, then no one is free from error. So anyone who falls into an error, then it's obligatory to not remain silent and to clarify the truth. And that this itself is a means of reducing the amount of differing. Right? So when we have this approach and we clarify and correct the errors, that itself is a means of reducing the differing which exists amongst the Muslims. So we continue today then with the chapters that are remaining. So today's chapter is titled, or one of the chapters that we'll be going through today, the first one is titled أخطر من اليهود والنصارى. أخطر من اليهود والنصارى, which means, chapter title, more dangerous than the Jews and the Christians. And obviously this is referring here to the harm of the people of innovation. The harm that results from the people of innovation upon Islam and the Muslims is, like the chapter title, أخطر من اليهود والنصارى, more dangerous than the Jews and the Christians. So then the author begins with a statement from Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, who said that the harm of the people of innovation, that the harms of the people of innovation, those who the innovations which constitute disbelief and which are likewise astray and cause people to go astray, that harm upon the Muslims is greater than the harm of the Jews and the Christians, because these innovators, so the people of innovation, they corrupt the hearts of the people to begin with. But as for the Jews and the Christians, and likewise any of the other people who basically are at war against the Muslims, against the lands of the Muslims, then the corruption of the hearts that they bring, it doesn't occur except after time, right? What this means is that the people, as we will see from other quotations, that the people of innovation, the Muslims, will be deceived by them because they are Muslims, they are Muslims, and they apparently practice Islam, and they have something of the truth with them. So the Muslims are easily deceived by these people and by their misguidance and by their innovations. As for the Jews and the Christians, and anyone else for that matter who might be in conflict with the Muslims or whatever, then the Muslims, and they overtake the Muslims are not deceived by them because they know what they're upon, they know what they're about. Right? So for this reason, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah said that the harm of the people of innovation is greater upon the Muslims than the harm of the Jews and the Christians. Why? Because these people, they corrupt the people's hearts, straight away. And so then the author says the corruption or the mischief or the corruption brought about by the Jews and the Christians is something that's apparent and clear to all Muslims. Muslims can see it and they know it. But as for the people of innovation, then their corruption isn't readily apparent to most people, to everyone. And likewise, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah said in another one of his quotations, he said, إِنَّ كَثِيرًا مِنْ أَهْلِ الْبِدَعِ مُنَافِقُونَ النِّفَاقَ الْأَكْبَرِ, that indeed many of the people of innovation are in fact hypocrites with the major hypocrisy. Right? So many of the people of innovation, we find that many of them are in fact concealed disbelief. They conceal disbelief and they have nifaq, the hypocrisy, which is the major hypocrisy, but they are just there, to cause corruption amongst the Muslimin and to bring false and futile ideas and so on and so forth. This is how it is. This is how you find amongst the people of innovation that these kind of individuals are to be found. And for this reason, the author then continues and says, for this reason, the scholars of Islam have indicated that to show rejection against the evil of the innovators, it comes first. It comes before the rejection against the religion of the Jews and the Christians. Right? To show rejection against the people of innovation, that comes before the rejection against the deen of the Jews and the Christians. And in fact, some of the scholars, some of the leading scholars of guidance, they held the view that to take away a school, a Sharia school, to take it away from an innovator, to confiscate it from him, to take it away from an innovator, is better and more superior than taking a piece of land from the non-Muslims. And Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah said, then he brings a quotation from Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, that from the well-known statements which have reached us is that the Shaykh Abu Amr ibn Salah, he was well-known scholar and muhaddith, that he ordered the taking or the confiscation, taking away the confiscation of the well-known school from Abu al-Hasan al-Amidi. Abu al-Hasan al-Amidi. Al-Amidi here was one of the negators of the attributes. And Ibn Salah, he said that taking it from him, taking this school from him, is better than the taking of Akka. And Akka is a place. It's actually a place. And one of the scholars, Sheikh Hamid al-Fiqhi, he basically explains that Akka is like, it's a geographical location. And at that time there was a group of people called the Afranj, and they were people who were occupying some of the lands of Sham and Egypt, present day Syria and Egypt, in the 6th century. So they'd come and they occupied some of the lands, and they'd taken a town called Akka, or an area called Akka. So the Sheikh Abu Amr ibn Salah, he said that to take away this school from this, from Al-Amidi, to take it from him, is better than the Muslims taking back Akka from the Afranj, from these people. And likewise, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he said, in the course of refuting the extremist Sufis, he said that, so he's referring here to the statements of the Sufis, that these statements and their likes, meaning of the Sufis, is from the greatest of falsehood. And we have already explained, we've already explained some of what these words mean, or what these statements mean. That it is falsehood, and that it is obligatory to show rejection against it, because to show rejection against this evil which is spread amongst many of the Muslims it comes before and is more befitting, and it comes before than showing rejection against the deen of the Jews and the Christians, that by whom the Muslims are not misled by. So the Muslims are not led astray by the deen of the Jews and the Christians, because they can see it for what it is. But as for the likes of these statements, like from the Sufis and so on and so forth, Ibn Taymiyyah says it's obligatory to reject them. And likewise, Imam Ahmad was of the view that it is permissible to seek aid from the Jews and the Christians, but it is not permissible to seek aid from the Jahmiyyah who negated Allah's names and His attributes. So Al-Marwazi, he said to Imam Ahmad, أَيُسْتَعَانُ بِالْيَهُودِ وَالنَّصَارَى وَهُمْ مُشْرِكُونَ وَلَا يُسْتَعَانُ بِالْجَهْمِ قَالَ يَا بُنَيْ يَغْتَرُّ بِهِمُ الْمُسْلِمُونَ. So he said to Imam Ahmad, is aid sought from the Jews and the Christians, yet they are mushrikun, and aid is not sought from a Jahmi? It's the question he put to Imam Ahmad. And so Imam Ahmad said, "O my son, O my child, the Muslims will become deceived by them," meaning by the Jahmiyyah. They will become deceived by the Jahmiyyah. And so the author says, so these individuals who are the chiefs and the heads, these people that we've quoted from, these scholars, they are the chiefs and the heads of the people of the Sunnah, like Imam Ahmad and Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Salah and other than them. And this is from their speech. We're not bringing this from ourselves. This is from these scholars. These scholars have said and established that the harm that comes from the people of innovation, who have deviant statements and deviant sayings, and who are astray and who lead other people astray, that they are more dangerous, and their corruption is far severe and far more severe and far worse than that of the Jews and the Christians. So, despite the fact that these statements have come from these great Imams like Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah and Imam Ahmad and other than them, you still find that in our time there are some people now, they begin to mock and began to make a mockery of the scholars in our times who say the same thing. The scholars who say the same thing, they begin to mock them and to joke about them. And we don't know why these same individuals don't mock Imam Ahmad and why they don't mock Ibn Taymiyyah and others, because they are the ones who actually established this principle, and not that they brought it from themselves, but they established that this is indeed correct, that the harm coming from the people of innovation is more severe and more harmful to Islam and the Muslimin than the harm coming from the Jews and the Christians, as far as the religion itself is concerned. So next chapter, following on from this, is that the differing that arises as a result of refutations, right? So the differing which occurs amongst the Muslimin as a result of refutations, meaning refuting the innovations, is less, right, and is less severe than the spreading of innovations and errors themselves, right? So the fact that the people of the Sunnah, that they refute the people of innovation and other than them, and no doubt this does lead to a differing. Of course, this will lead to differing and separation, right? But that differing and separation that results from the people of the Sunnah refuting the falsehood is less, right? Is far less than the differing that results due to the innovations and the errors which are spread amongst the people. So this is the principle and the issue in this chapter. So the author says that this issue, this whole topic of refuting the people of innovation is something that sometimes it can become confusing to many of the general Muslims, right? And so they might say, why do the scholars, why are they attacking each other? Why is this scholar speaking about that one, and why is that scholar speaking about that one? Why are they attacking each other? And you see many of the Muslims coming out with the likes of this statement. And likewise, you'll see that many of these people who they really like false claimants to knowledge, they're false claimants to knowledge. They claim and they say, or they might start saying, or they might start asking that we should withhold from refuting the opposers and the innovators, and we should not do this because it will then help us to become united, right? So forget the innovators, forget the people who deviate, whatever, leave the mistakes, whatever. We should just try and be united. There are some people who falsely claim knowledge. These are the likes of statements that they make, and these people didn't realize, or they don't know, that the innovations and the mistakes in themselves are, these different paths, that they are the very ones that call to separation. They are the ones that cause separation and call to separation, and they are the ones that basically take people away from the straight path. And obviously, in the presence of all of these deviant paths, there can never be unity and harmony. So then, even, let's say for example, even if we accepted what they said and we listened to their request and we fulfilled their request and we said, okay, let's abandon let's abandon speaking about innovations and the deviations and everything else. Let's just keep quiet and silent. And if we did that, would the differing be removed? Would the differing be raised? Of course it wouldn't. It would still be there. Because Allah has decreed for there to be differing. Allah's decreed from His qadr. He's decreed that the people will not cease to be differing, except of course those upon whom is Allah's mercy, as per the verse in Surah Al-Hud that we discussed at the beginning of this book. So what is obligatory is the refutation of innovations and mistakes, and this is a means of guarding and protecting the Sharia from becoming distorted. So the author then brings another quotation from Asim al-Ahwal, who basically said to Qatada, he said, do you not see, I see that the scholars attack one another, right? So he's saying this to Qatada. And Qatada said, O Ahwal, do you not know that a man, when he brings about an innovation, he invents an innovation, that it is desirable for it to be mentioned, so that caution can be taken against it. Right? So, in other words, Asim, he saw that some of the scholars may be speaking about others, and he maybe didn't understand why. And Qatada said, well, when a man brings, he brings something of innovation, then it ought to be mentioned, so that the people can take caution against it. So in other words, the scholars, they will refute someone who falls into an error, or he innovates a mistake, and they mention it to the people, so that the people can take caution against it, and they don't think that it's from the religion. And likewise, Ash-Shatibi rahimahullah, in his famous book Al-I'tisam, he said, whilst he was refuting and speaking about the people who make mistakes and the people who innovate, he said, the likes of these people, it is vital that they are mentioned, and that basically severity and a display is made of them. Because what comes back upon the Muslims of harm, right, so what results from these people of harm, and it comes back upon the Muslimin, nothing but harm will come upon the Muslims if these people are left. If we leave and abandon these people and leave them alone and not say anything, then nothing except harm will return upon the Muslims. And this harm is greater. This harm would be greater than the harm that would arise if we were to mention them, and if we were to make the people flee from them. And then he continues that there's no doubt that the differing which occurs between the Muslims and between the ones who call to innovation by themselves, then this is easier and it's lighter than the differing that occurs between the Muslimin and between the callers to innovation and between those who follow them and those who are with them. Right, so you understand what he's saying. What he's saying is that basically, if we were to refute the people of innovation and speak about them and make a public display of them and warn the people from them, no doubt there will be a differing that will occur. Right, there will be a split, no doubt. But that differing and that splitting that occurs as a result of this action of warning from the evil, it is lesser and less harmful than the situation where if we kept quiet about these mistakes and these innovations and these people of innovation, and they gathered followers and the people who became attached to them, and so therefore as a result a greater amount of differing occurred further down the line. Right, so this shows that so then he explains the principle that when we find that there are two harms that we are faced with, there are two harms, then no doubt we have to take the least harmful of the two and the easiest of the two. Why? Because because some type of evil is to accommodate some type of evil or a part of evil is better, or it's not better, but it's lighter than having a great or a large amount of evil or all evil. So and then he continues further on and he says, likewise. This is basically the nature of the Sharia. This is in fact like the nature of the Sharia itself. That it always allows. The Sharia as such that basically it allows us to bear the burden of that which is the least. Something which is the lightest and the least, in order to protect us from something that is more burdensome. Right? Something which is more burdensome. So this is a principle in the Sharia. Okay, the next chapter that the author brings is titled Al-i'radu anil haqq ba'da wuduhihi kabiratun, which means that to turn away from the truth after it becoming apparent is a major sin. So a person, when the truth becomes clear and manifest, for him to then turn away from it, it is a major sin. And so the author says that the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum and the Tabi'un, that they used to differ. No doubt there was differences amongst them. And one person who had the truth with him, he would explain the truth to the one who had a mistake with him. And the truth would be explained with evidence from the book and from the Sunnah. And this is how it was with the Sahaba, and this is how it was amongst the Tabi'in. This was, no doubt they erred, but the one amongst them who had the truth, he would clarify and explain, to the one who had erred. And they would bring the evidence from the book and the Sunnah. So now, if a person was to persist upon an error after the truth had been made clear, then we find that in their time, that they would rebuke him, and they would show rejection against him, and they would show, they would even sometimes maybe make hijrah, abandon him. And even if the issue that was involved, even if it was just like a small issue, or like a minor issue, or like a like a marginal issue. Like some people say these days, oh, it's only like a small issue and it's it's just a side issue, whatever. Right? This is what people say today because now they make light of the affairs of the religion. But even in the time of the Sahaba, even if the issue was very small, like if it was something that wasn't like from the major affairs, then still, they would show rejection. And we find that they didn't start saying amongst the Sahaba and the Tabi'een, well, let's pardon each other in those issues in which we disagree. Let's put this to one side. They never ever said that, and the reason was because any small kind of error, no matter how small, is still a turning away from the evidence and turning away from the truth. So to turn away from the truth and turn away from the evidence, even after it's become clear, is is something that means that a person is persisting upon falsehood, and this really is like it's something that harms a person's ittiba. A person can't truly be making ittiba when he falls into the likes of this action. So then the author brings a statement from Abu al-Qasim al-Asbahani in his book Al-Hujja fi Bayan al-Mahajja, and Al-Asbahani is one of the scholars from amongst the early generations, and so he says that the followers, the al-ittiba with the scholars, meaning to follow, the following in the view of the scholars, is that you take the sunan, the affairs of the sunnah from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those which are authentic in the view of the scholars, and obviously those who narrated these sunan and those who safeguarded and memorized these sunan, right? So it's to take them, meaning to accept them and to submit to them, right? To humiliate, to basically submit oneself to them and to show submission to the command of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that is contained within these sunan. This is what is meant by al-ittiba. Right? So in other words, a person must humble and submit to whatever he finds in the narrations. And then the author gives an example of Abdullah bin Umar, may Allah be pleased with him. He said when he heard he said that he heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, "Do not prevent your women from going to the mosque. When they seek permission from you, then do not prevent the women from going to the mosque." So he had a son called Bilal, and Bilal said, "By Allah, we shall indeed prevent them. We shall stop them from going." And so his father Abdullah, he reviled him, and he gave him like a very severe revilement. He reviled him for obviously stating this because he's willfully opposing the command of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so basically the author says we must make a difference, then therefore we have to make a difference between the person who is arrogant and he persists deliberately upon falsehood even after it has become clear. Right? This person isn't someone who's pardoned, isn't someone who's forgiven. For this, he is someone who is sinful, meaning obviously if he doesn't repent, he is someone who is sinful, right? So we have to make a distinction between this person and between a person who basically he genuinely makes a mistake, he has a faulty interpretation, or maybe he is, he's ignorant and he wasn't aware, so therefore this person is to be excused. And then he brings a quote from Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah from his Majmu' al-Fatawa, who said that the muta'awwil and the jahil, so muta'awwil is a person, he makes ijtihad, but he has some sort of faulty interpretation, faulty understanding. So this person, likewise the jahil, someone who was ignorant in an issue, then they can be forgiven for falling into a mistake. And the ruling of these people is not the same as the ruling of the one who is a mu'anid, the one who deliberately and willfully opposes, and the fajir, the one who commits an open, clear, deliberate sin. So Allah has indeed given everything its proper place and its proper position or rank. And likewise, the author says, likewise the scholar who who might have erred in an issue because the hujjah hadn't reached him, the evidence hadn't reached him, or maybe he had a previous faulty interpretation or understanding, then likewise this person is forgiven at the time that the truth hasn't come to him. But as for after the truth has come and the proof has come and the confusion or the misunderstanding has been removed, then there is no excuse. Then that person cannot be excused, that alim cannot be excused. And then Ibn Taymiyyah brings a quotation from Ibn Taymiyyah again, who said that when you see a statement which is a statement of error, and it has arisen from an imam, it's something that occurred before, then this can be forgiven due to the fact that the evidence or the proof hadn't come to him. And but as for the one to whom the proof has now come, it's reached him, then that person, forgiveness is not for that person. He won't be forgiven like the example of the first person. And so for this reason, the person, like for example, the hadith which speaks of the punishment of the grave, it now reaches a person, right, and he doesn't accept it, right? This person is to be declared an innovator, and likewise, if he rejects it. But as for example, Aisha radiallahu anha, for example, in her case, right, they are not to be declared innovators because they did not know, and the evidence did not come to them from the Sharia that the dead can indeed hear in their graves, right? Because obviously some of them, Sahaba, denied it and they didn't accept it, but this is because the Sharia evidence hadn't yet reached them. And so obviously, on that basis, they said that the dead do not hear, and so they're not to be declared innovators. So then Shaykh al-Islam says that this is a great and mighty foundation, so reflect upon it because it is beneficial. And in the notes, another quotation from Shaykh al-Islam, who said that many of those from the Salaf and the Khalaf who made ijtihad, from the scholars who made ijtihad, they sometimes said something, or they sometimes did something that actually was an innovation, but they didn't know it was an innovation. And this was either due to weak ahadith that they had, which they thought to be authentic, or due to verses which they understood in a way, that something that they understood something from them that wasn't actually from those verses, or either due to an opinion that they held. So, this is what we find. So in these kind of issues, in all these issues, we find that the texts hadn't actually reached them, right? The text hadn't actually reached them, and that's why they held the position that they held. So obviously, once the text came to them, then no doubt, obviously, they would have adopted the correct position and the correct opinion. So the point being here in this chapter is that to turn away from the truth after it becomes apparent is a major sin, and this shows that there is no excuse from these people who know, for example, that what so-and-so person or what so-and-so group is upon is indeed an error and a mistake, yet still they say, well, let's forget these mistakes and errors and let's just unite and whatever, and they won't show rejection, and they won't, so this kind of behavior is like a major sin. And this principle that they have of let us cooperate in that which we agree and pardon each other in that which we disagree, this is this is false, and it clashes with these solid foundations that we are discussing here from the book and the Sunnah. And then we finish today, inshallah, with the next chapter, which is just a benefit which comes from a person by the name of Ibn Hubayra. Ibn Hubayra was like a minister, a wazir, al-wazir Ibn Hubayra, and he was like a leader in a certain location. So, the author says that al-wazir Ibn Hubayra, he was someone who he studied deeply the legislation and the intent, the wisdom and the intent behind the legislation. He studied all of the principles, and he went through all of the texts. He studied them, examined all the texts that speak about making jihad against the struggling against the mushrikeen and the innovators, and he studied the biographies and the seerah of the rightly guided khulafa and how they struggled and strove against, the mushrikeen. And likewise, he looked into all of these affairs and he pondered and reflected over how the innovators, how they harm Islam and the nation, the ummah of Islam. And likewise he studied and looked at how the external enemy, for example, from the mushrikeen and the kuffar, whatever, what harm they have caused. So he looked at all of these things, and he came to the conclusion. This is Ibn al-Wazir Ibn Hubayra. He came to the conclusion that the harm of these innovators in the ummah is more harmful than the corruption that is brought about by the mushrikeen. And he in one of his books or in one of his writings, Ibn Hubayra, he was speaking or commenting, or he brought the hadith of Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, where Ali bin Abi Talib mentioned the Khawarij. So Ali mentioned the Khawarij, and Ali mentioned something about a man from amongst them, on his hand or on his arm, he would have something that looked like something like a growth or whatever that would look like a breast. And he said that if it hadn't been for the fact that you might have been proud, or that you might have become proud and vain, then I would have narrated to you what Allah has promised to those amongst you who kill them. Right? So, meaning that if it wasn't for the fact that I might have found that you might have become a bit like kind of proud or whatever, then I would have narrated to you what was said by the Prophet Muhammad upon the tongue of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the reward that Allah has promised for the one who fights against those people or who kills them. Meaning, he's talking about the Khawarij. So, Ibn Hubayra, he brought this hadith, he mentioned this hadith, and then he said, so now he's commenting upon this hadith, he says that in this hadith is from the fiqh, from the understanding that's in this hadith, is the abundant reward. The abundant reward for fighting the Khawarij. For fighting the Khawarij and killing the Khawarij. And that, and the fact that that what happened with Ali is that he reached the situation where he feared that, that if he was to inform his companions about the reward that there is to be found in killing the Khawarij, that they might become, that they might find that they might become, maybe have something of like excessive joy and pride or whatever. So for that reason, he didn't, he didn't do that. So, but however, he mentioned this. But he mentioned this, though. He said what he said, so that nobody might think that at the time when these Khawarij occurred, so that nobody might think that when these people emerged, the Khawarij, that nobody might think that to fight the mushrikeen comes before fighting the Khawarij. So this is why he said what he said. He made this remark and he said what he said, just so that the people didn't think, that to fight the mushrikeen comes before fighting the Khawarij. Rather, he wanted to show and indicate that to fight the Khawarij, what a great reward there is for fighting the Khawarij, and so that the people didn't think that we should leave the Khawarij and then go and fight the mushrikeen. Why? Because the harm of the Khawarij is greater upon Islam and the Muslimin than those other than. So anyway, he continues and he said, Ibn Hubayra, so he said that this is so that no one might think in his time that to fight the mushrikeen comes before fighting the Khawarij. Rather, fighting the Khawarij in this manner comes before fighting the mushrikeen. Why? Because in fighting the Khawarij, there is a preservation of the capital of Islam. Right? So meaning, whatever Islam has already got, when you fight the Khawarij, you are protecting that. Right? And this, whereas fighting the mushrikeen is seeking an increase in the capital of Islam. Right? So do you understand? So for example, what he's saying is that a person, he seeks to preserve what he's already got first. That's the first priority. That comes first. You do that first before you then go out and try to seek an increase in what you have. Right? So to preserve Islam and to preserve the lands of Islam and the Muslimin from the harm of the Khawarij, that comes before seeking an increase in the capital of Islam. That's the end of the statement of Ibn Hubayra. And Ibn Hubayra. And Muhammad bin Yahya al-Dhuhli, he said that I heard Yahya bin Ma'in, from the greatest of the Imams and the Muhaddithin from the early times, from the Salaf. He said, Yahya bin Ma'in said, to defend the Sunnah, الذب عن السنة أفضل من الجهاد في سبيل الله. That to defend the Sunnah is more superior than jihad in the path of Allah. So then Muhammad ibn Yahya al-Dhuhli said, I said to Yahya, a man, he spends his wealth, he tires himself, he ties his body, maybe ibadah, whatever, and he makes jihad, he struggles. So this one is better than this one, meaning the one who defends the Sunnah is better than this one, the one who, he spends his money and everything else. So Yahya bin Ma'in said, yes, by a great deal. Yes, by a great deal. Naam bi kathir, by a great deal. So the author then says, after mentioning all of these narrations, he says that this is what our scholars were upon. This is what they were upon. They considered that to strive against the mubtadi'ah, the innovators, is the foundation. This is the foundation. And to strive against the mulhideen, the deviants and the kuffar and other than them, it's merely a branch of the foundation. The foundation is jihad against the innovators. And then a branch from that is obviously against the deviants and the kuffar and other than them. And Abdul Rahman as-Sa'di, Sheikh Abdul Rahman as-Sa'di rahimahullah, from the last century, he said, al-jihadu naw'an, that jihad is two types. جهاد يقصد به صلاح المسلمين وإصلاحهم في عقائدهم وأخلاقهم وجميع شؤونهم الدينية والدنيوية وفي تربيتهم العلمية والعملية وهذا النوع هو أصل الجهاد وقوامه. So he says the jihad is of two types. The first one, which is the jihad by which the rectification of the Muslims is intended, and to a rectification of their beliefs and their mannerisms and all of the affairs of the religious and the worldly affairs that pertain to the people, and likewise in cultivating them both in terms of knowledge and in action. And this type of jihad here is the foundation of jihad and its support, right? and its support, its foundation and its support. And then he says وعليه يتأسس النوع الثاني وهو جهاد يقصد به دفع المعتدين على الإسلام والمسلمين من الكفار والمنافقين والملحدين وجميع أعداء الدين ومقاومتهم. Which means, and then upon this first one, meaning upon this first one, is the second one established, or the second one founded, which is the jihad by which the repelling of those who transgress against Islam and the Muslims is intended, right? To repel those who transgress against Islam and the Muslims, so that from amongst the hypocrites and the mulhideen and the kuffar and the them, and all of the various enemies of the religion, and to hold them at bay, to hold them back, and to face up to them and to hold them back, right? So the initial jihad itself, its foundation is the innovators, and to purify the religion and to cultivate the Muslims upon knowledge and action, upon their deen, whatever. This is the actual foundation of jihad. And the branch of it, what follows on from it, is that which is to repel the transgression upon Islam and the Muslimin. So with that, inshallah, we'll finish today's lesson, and we'll continue with whatever remains from this book, inshallah ta'ala, in the next lesson, inshallah ta'ala.